Family violence is violence really experienced by people who are members of a family. It can be extended family, but there's no different. It really is violence. And if you took the word family from before the front of it, it would be the same as what you would expect strangers to experience as well. And it can take the form of in different forms. It can be physical, which I think is where we most readily identify that physical violence is when we actually hurt somebody or injure them. But it can also be psychological abuse where we put down people, demean them, and it can be spiritual, it can be financial, where we are controlling their financial means and access to money. It can be a variety of different forms, and each of them is equally as wrong and can be very, very dangerous. And I think that there's a lot that we need to do to really understand those different forms and be able to recognise them. Family violence affects 1 in 3 women in Australia, and I would go as far as to say that would be globally as well. And it affects 1 in 4 children. And currently we have 1 woman a week who will be murdered. And this is largely when they choose to leave a violent relationship. And so it affects people in our communities that it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter how rich or poor you are, what kind of house, what kind of suburb, what kind of job. It happens to anybody and can happen to anybody. And I think that that's something that, can be confronting when we realise that somebody like yourself can find themselves in a position where they're in a relationship that could become violent. I think, what I try to explain is that family violence is not selective. It doesn't mean that you have to have been brought up in a violent family or experienced violence before. I have met people who are judges and magistrates, teachers and lawyers. I have met nurses and doctors, and I have met full-time carers, and they have all had their lives touched and impacted by family violence. I think if we're experiencing family violence, the first thing to do is to realise that this is nothing to be ashamed of, and this is not your fault, that it is never acceptable for anyone to use violence, ever, no matter who you are. And so I think the first thing to do is when you're in a position where you may not be really clear, or you may be very clear, but is to reach out for some help. And I think what's important is to do that with somebody that you can trust, someone that I feel has your confidentiality and safety as paramount. So I always feel that if you're not happy, I think your intuition is normally right, and that you just need someone that you can feel is able to listen to you without judgment, and they can help guide you as to what you should do next. Often it feels difficult to know how to help. What can we do? Sometimes I think we feel quite hopeless or helpless and want to do more. I think it's really important to understand that the first thing to do is actually ask somebody, are they okay? Are you okay? I'm worried about you. You don't seem as if you're yourself. Is there something you'd like to tell me? And to be able to acknowledge that somebody is not okay, I think can be a really good opportunity for that person to start to open up and to share. And I think that, often we don't know what to say. We feel very awkward. So how, what is a non-invasive kind of question, but is built on compassion and genuine empathy and concern. And I think that the best thing to do is not try to tell people what they should do, not to offer unhelpful advice, and most definitely not to judge the person, which is not always easy. And so I think sometimes it's understanding the limitations we have as concerned colleagues or friends or family members, and making sure that the right experts are actually able to step in and help support that person to really understand that this is a very difficult place for some people, and they may have enormous fear around telling anybody, and they may feel that by involving the police or anyone else, there is significant risk. So I think it's really important that people understand their boundaries and the part that they play, and to make sure that people who have expertise and are really connected to that person.